This is especially important for women because we are going to experience significant muscle loss earlier due to lower peak muscle mass compared to men. And especially as we age, we lose the amount of type 2 muscle fiber. Type 2 is going to be more related to strength and power. And we lose that not only the amount, but also the ability to contract them at a greater rate than men because of our loss of estrogen during menopause. So this is where we see a little bit of those differences being highlighted between men and women, and why, especially for women, we want to be talking about maintaining our strength and gaining muscle. And we want to make sure that we're providing ways and tools for you to do that more effectively for what you enjoy.
Welcome back to another episode from the Optimal Body Podcast. I'm Dr. Dom.
I'm Doc Jen.
And today we're going to be talking about building muscle, and do you have to lift heavy weights, or can you build muscle with lifting lower loads? So today we're going to be talking about strength training, which we are huge proponents of because sarcopenia and this age-related muscle mass loss is a huge topic. And how do we prevent it? Do we need to be lifting and crushing heavy weights in the gym, or can we do it with lighter loads? Comment below. Are you someone who strength trains? Do you strength train heavy? Have you done lighter or lower load strength training? Please comment below. We want to know what is going on in your lives so that we can interact with that, so that we can make episodes on that in the future. And make sure you hit the subscription button and notification bell, because we come out with one of these podcasts every single week. And Jen is also releasing videos every week on different movement issues and pain diagnosis that you aren't going to want to miss out on.
Now, today we're answering a question that has come in. Can you build muscle without having to lift super heavy weights? Because there's some people that just don't enjoy going to the gym and lifting really heavy weights, whether it's from a past injury, whether it's just not the workout that you enjoy, whatever it may be, for whatever reason. Yeah. People want to understand, I know, and I'm hearing how important muscle is, how important it is to my longevity, my overall health, everything, right? As we age. So we want to talk through other ways that you can still build muscle without having to lift super heavy.
And I mean, like you said, sarcopenia, this is this age-related muscle mass loss that for a long time was seen as inevitable. Just the statistics say that muscle mass decreases approximately 3 to 8% per decade after the age of 30, with the rate accelerating after the age of 60. Yeah. And muscle mass has been seen, muscle mass, it's what produces our strength, it's what helps us produce our power. And the decline of that is definitely associated with lower quality of life, lower functional ability later in life, risk of falls. So there's so many reasons that we want to be combating this age-related muscle loss, which we know that with strength training and with, focused and specific training for what we need and what we enjoy can help to combat that.
This is especially important for women because we are going to experience significant muscle loss earlier due to lower peak muscle mass compared to men. And especially as we age, we lose the amount of type 2 muscle fibers. And we have type 1, we have type 2. Type 1 is more like your endurance muscle fibers. Type 2 is going to be more related to strength and power. And we lose that not only the amount, but also the ability to contract them at a greater rate than men because of our loss of estrogen during menopause. So this is where we see a little bit of those differences being highlighted between men and women, and why, especially for women, we want to be talking about maintaining our strength and gaining muscle. And we want to make sure that we're providing ways and tools for you to do that more effectively for what you enjoy.
And being that this is something that everyone goes through, there's so much research on the benefits of strength training, to mitigate this muscle loss and just its overall function on our life. And in a congregation of all of these studies that this research article looked at, it showed that by expanding the strength span, which I think is just their word for continuing to strength train, by using muscle strength activities at every stage of life, individuals may not only live longer, but may be more likely to move independently, function safely, and perform a range of physical activities effectively throughout their lifespan. So just kind of setting up the importance of this topic and why we want to your point earlier, like people are afraid to lift heavy, or they don't enjoy it, or they see people lifting heavy barbells and they're like, that's just not for me. So can we do this with lower loads?
And we now know that we can. And I think this question is also posed because of what you see on social media, right? And it's like, there's so much like, you have to do this, don't do that. It's not, like there's so much of what you have to do, should do, that's being thrown around social media. And sometimes it gets in our head, but let's come back to the basics. Like, as long as we're doing something, we're going to be making more improvement than doing nothing.
I don't have these statistics on the top of my head, but the percentage of people that just don't meet baseline bare minimum physical activity guidelines, if you're doing something, you're going to be ahead of the pack.
Exactly.
You're going to be, something you enjoy that keeps you moving, bar none, that's going to be the first step.
Exactly. You're walking, you're hiking, you're doing dance classes. Okay. Maybe you're not even doing resistance training yet. Hopefully we're going to convince you how you could do it a little bit more effectively in your life and something you enjoy to add in. But as long as you're moving, it's going to be better than nothing. So I just want to continue to the importance of movement is everything. And it's key here. Now, when we're looking at, let's look at the science behind lower resistance training and what is actually happening. Again, we're going back to that muscle fiber activation and what we really need. And that's where we want to improve, particularly our type 2 when we're talking about our strength and our power. And that's what's really kind of getting neglected as we age.
And the ones that women lose, like you said, at a faster rate.
Exactly. What a study has found is that in performing resistance training tasks to failure, regardless of whether the load was heavy or light. So again, getting that exercise task to failure led to similar activation in both type 1 and type 2 muscle fibers. And this really suggests that it's a critical factor of reaching that muscular failure, not necessarily, it having to be super, super heavy.
Yeah. A second study that we found reviewed 200 different studies and was published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine, found that resistance training increases muscle strength and mass, as we kind of know, regardless of how often or intensely someone trains. So again, this continues to confirm that regardless of if you're lifting heavy, if you're lifting light, one time a week, multiple times a week, you're going to see muscle mass increases. They might be at different levels, but you're still going to see muscle mass increase.
But we do have to be paying attention to the rep range. And that's where we see that there is a most effective repetition range. And this was research led by Dr. Stuart Phillips. And he demonstrated that lifting lighter weights to the point of muscular failure can be as effective as lifting heavier weights for muscle growth. But the key is performing enough repetitions to reach muscular failure. And that typically occurs within 30 repetitions. So when we're kind of thinking about stimulating those type 2 muscle fibers and getting close to failure. And this is where we have to identify, like, it doesn't mean that you're feeling the burn in your muscles. Like, I kind of talk about this, like, think about Pilates or aerobics type classes where your arms are out for a long time and you're doing like little tiny circles, right? We're having no load, high repetition, and we start to feel this burn within our muscles. That's actually lactic acid building up in the muscle. That's not getting your muscle to failure. There has to be this understanding, right? Of the muscle failure is going to literally be, I'm lifting something, and by the end of however many repetitions, under 30, but I'm changing how quickly I can lift this weight. And I'm slowing down. I can hardly lift it. And it's really changing more so in the velocity of how I'm moving. So rather than just being able to do it really quick or feeling that burn, I'm literally changing the velocity at which I'm lifting.
Okay, so kind of setting the stage that muscular failure, because again, we're kind of distinguishing between gaining strength or endurance in your muscles and actually building muscle volume and increasing our muscle mass. Like you mentioned, the aerobics and stuff and doing hundreds of arm circles, it very well could be and probably is beneficial for, muscular endurance and different aspects like that. But it might not necessarily grow your muscle mass, which
probably
is what
not tapping into the type 2 muscle fibers.
Yeah, not tapping into the type 2 muscle fibers yet. So if we're looking at load level, like if you are somebody that likes to lift heavy loads, we're wanting a load that is going to get you to that failure in 8 reps or less. And this is generally, if you're going off of a 1 rep max, like in our 70 to 80% range of our 1 rep max. Moderate loads is something that's going to get you to failure within 8 to 15 repetitions, and light loads anywhere from 15 but under 30 repetitions.
And think of this, I would say, as like a resistance band. A lot of people can say, oh, well, I'm going to use a resistance band for a particular exercise. But if within that resistance band, you can still lift at the same speed over 30 repetitions, we're probably not going to tap into that really getting into that hypertrophy state as much as we want to. So I'm all for like, listen, if you enjoy those workouts, they're fun for you, like continue to do them, but also think of how can I just reach for a little bit heavier of a weight? And maybe I'm taking a break prior. So maybe you're in like a circuit type class and there's a certain time for this class, right? Of doing a certain exercise. And so you typically grab the lighter weights because you're doing it for longer and you're doing more than 30 repetitions. What if you just decided to go a little bit heavier and you took a little bit longer of a break, which is okay. Yeah. Or maybe you hit that muscular failure, you put down the weights and now you're just doing it body weight, right? And so the intention has to be a little bit clearer as to what you're trying to stimulate and what you're trying to do. And again, knowing that improving our muscle mass, improving this hypertrophy is only going to help us in the long term as we continue to age.
And so another thing to talk about is, okay, if we're going to failure, like we need to make sure we're having recovery.
Yes.
You know, this isn't something that you're going to be able to do every single day. And it actually would be detrimental to try and do something like this before your body is fully recovered. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of research in, okay, how many times do I need to train each muscle group a week? Mm-hmm. Like say in my week cycle of training, how many times do I need to train each muscle group to get the most muscle mass gains? If you're just starting out, one time a week, like we mentioned, is going to help you show improvements, is going to help you show muscle mass gain when done over a certain amount of time. But once you start to get conditioned to that, it has actually been shown, there was this article I read that collected 10 different studies that compared exercising 1 time per week per muscle group versus 2 to 3 times a week per muscle group. And all of those studies concluded that training a muscle group 2 to 3 times per week will show more benefit long-term in muscle mass growth than just training 1 time per week. So that's where if you want to have 2 workouts early on and you're just starting, okay, just train upper body muscle groups in one of those workouts and then lower body muscle groups in the second workout, and make sure you have plenty of rest in between. Once you get used to that after maybe an 8-week cycle, then you can say, okay, I'm just going to do 2 full body workouts so that you're hitting each muscle group in both of those workouts.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are asking us these questions because there's joint sensitivities or there's previous pain.
There's pain, there's
and
injury.
There's something that we want to be cognizant of rather than just lifting heavy, right? And so there is research that shows if we're using something like a blood flow restriction with older adults, you can lift really light and still get
really light or even just range of motion.
Yeah, or even just using nothing and still be getting those hypertrophy gains within and protecting the joint a little bit more, not putting so much strain. However, I will say that's not something that you're doing typically on your own. Yeah. You're doing that with a trained professional who understands blood flow restriction or a physical therapist, or you're newly in pain. And that's why you're trying to gain strength and build muscle around, having this injury or this
around
pain.
The area of pain. This is really common with athletes who've just had knee, elbow, some sort of injury on their extremity that you can put a blood pressure cuff on. But like you said, it's always got to be monitored by some sort of professional who's trained in that, so they're using the correct pressures. But yeah, the research study we looked at showed that older individuals who were just doing high load resistance training and individuals who were doing low load resistance training with the blood flow restriction basically showed all of the same improvements in so many different markers. Their knee extensor strength, their 5-minute walk test, systolic blood pressure, high density lipoproteins for their cholesterol, triglycerides, growth hormone, everything still improved in the people doing the low load with the blood flow restriction. So that can be an option if you're somebody who's like, I really can hardly even squat without severe pain.
And we're going to go through some exercises that you can do to help gradually ease you into resistance training and give you like full examples of what you can do. However, I want to challenge you a little bit because this is something that I challenged my mom on. It's this thought, especially for women, that my exercise isn't about lifting heavy. Like if I go into the workout class, the weights that are available are like 2 to 5 pound weights. And so traditionally that's what I'm used to. I'm used to aerobic type exercise. I'm used to really high rep, really low load. Like that's very low load, right? And not almost telling your brain, you can't do that. Oh, I can't deadlift. I can't lift a barbell. Yeah. Well, but can you? And, someone like Dr. Christina Previtt, who's a a physical therapist in Canada, and she has made such incredible improvements on working with the older population and shifting this mindset of the fragility that we think of older adults into the power and the capability of older adults to continue to gain muscle and to improve their strength and power as we age.
And just keeping function in mind. Like, are you somebody who wants to be able to go out for a grocery haul and carry the 2 10-pound or 2 15-pound bags back into the house without needing to take individual items out and bring them in one at a time? With your mom, I think about our son Dante, who's getting probably around 25 pounds. And
at 2 years old,
he's already at the age or the weight, I guess, that she's like, oh, I don't really carry him that much because it's just too heavy for me, or my elbows, my shoulders really start to hurt if I carry him too much. And that's where I appreciate that you challenge her and just say, like, do you want to be the grandparent who your grandkids get to a certain age and you just say, sorry, I can't lift you anymore, I can't play with you in that way because you're getting too heavy, or you still have the confidence to pick them up and carry them around?
There's this really cool, I wish I knew who it was, this grandma on social media. She has her grandson hold onto her legs that are bent as she's hanging onto the bar, and she's doing pull-ups. She's had him in a carrier and she's doing full dips. Like, that is my goal as a I can't even do that as a parent. So that is major goals as a grandparent. But just continuing to remember we're not fragile and we have a lot more capability than we typically, give ourselves credit for. So now we want to go into designing your own kind of workout that is lower load, but still going to tap into those hypertrophy gains. And, we kind of want to hit all the different aspects of the body,
all the different muscle groups.
And so one of the first places, especially if you're like, squats have really hurt me, whatever it may be, step ups. Step ups is, you can modify that in so many different ways. So you could use, like for my mom, for example, I use a step stool. So it's not a high step up. A lot of people,
about the height of a stair.
Right. So it's not like a box. It's not a bench. It's not anything scary. It's a stair. And I sometimes have her hold onto the pole. So think of holding onto a doorway, holding onto something sturdy in front of you. And if you start just up on this step and then you slowly lower down, barely tap your heel and then come back up. And you can still use assistance when you're doing this, but you're thinking of going slow on the way down, pushing down to the foot to come back up.
Just try doing 30 of those.
On one side.
That's like something for me that by the time I got to 30, I'd probably be getting close to failure, even at body weight.
Oh, I would get close to failure in like 10 to 15 reps of that.
Yeah, because that, especially if you're going slow and controlled, it's going to be putting your body under the load where you get to that failure that we're looking for. Other examples for lower body muscle groups would be something like a heels elevated goblet squat. Elevating the heels often for, many people help make a squat feel more comfortable and doing that at a low load. But again, if you're somebody who doesn't strength train a lot, just doing heel elevated bodyweight squats, you could, by the time you get to 30, feel like that's it, I can't do anymore.
Especially if you're trying to go as low as you can, because a lot of people traditionally were thought, oh, I'm doing a squat, I stick my butt out and I only go, to my knees. But that heels elevated, like Dom said, gives you a greater range of motion. So if you haven't really squatted in that greater range of motion, you're going up and down, body weight of that for a lot of people can be pretty demanding.
And then the last one we had was heels elevated, or elevated bridges.
Yeah.
So you're going to be
foot elevated,
putting those feet up on some sort of stool, some sort of step, even a bench. If you're looking to get really high, that's going to really target the back chain, the hamstrings, the glutes. If you're able to do 30 of those, which 30 of those itself would be really tough, then you could transition to just doing single leg heels elevated. Again, I don't know if I could do 30 single leg elevated bridges like that.
Tough. And again, you're going slow, controlled, thinking of your form. And if your form starts to break down, then that's an indication that we're starting to hit that muscular failure, or you're not getting as high in that rep, you're starting to hit muscular failure. So looking at all of those ways, then when we start to look at the upper body, one of the easiest ways that you can really start to build in upper body strength is push-ups. And I'm not just talking about getting on your knees and doing some push-ups, but actually going through your full range and good form. For a lot of people, that's going to be starting on an elevated surface, even like a counter or a bench or a chair, and really so if you place your arms out in front of you and you just bend your elbows, look at where your elbows go just naturally. This is the form that you want to hit into that push-up. So instead of flaring the elbows up or out to the side or squeezing into you, you want your elbows to just come naturally at that diagonal. That's the same thing that you want to do in the push-up. But can you go all the way down, chest to the ground, and press all the way back up, pushing from those shoulder blades? When you do, again, good form, holding that core in nice and tight, squeezing that bottom, how many do you actually get to?
Yeah. I mean, me doing them on the ground, Jen points it out. If I'm doing sets greater than 30, I tend to cheat. And then she calls me out for doing my half push-ups.
You're getting to muscular failure.
Yeah. So good. I'm doing what I need to do.
Oh, God.
Leave me alone. And then to hit the back, we have either a row or a pull down variation. Again, you can do bent over rows. Some people don't like those because it bothers their back. So then you can do a seated row with a band wrapped around the pole. I mean, we use the frame of our rack in our gym, but if you put a band in the doorway, but if you're ever going to be using bands, keep the muscular failure in mind. You want it to be getting really difficult where you can't go through the full range of motion by 30 repetitions, or pull downs, having that band on something high where you can pull down. Jen even brought up doing assisted pull-ups where your feet are actually on the ground. So you have either a bench or a box from a bar that you can hang from, or on our rack, we just put the bar at a low level so your feet can rest on the ground, and then you do feet assisted pull-ups, which again, you're in control of how much you're doing, so you should be able to get yourself to failure between 15 and 20 reps.
Yeah, I mean, the goal isn't to use your legs as much as possible. The legs are there to assist if you need it. But honestly, if I'm honest with how I'm trying to only pull from my upper body and not let my legs do a whole lot, I'm doing 6 to 8 reps. Like, I cannot do more than that, or else I can't get my chest to the bar. So being really honest, again, with your exercises, because who are you doing this for? You're doing it for yourself, right? So it's not about doing the most or doing them the fastest. It's about doing them most effectively. And then going into front and side raises. For a lot of people, they can get neck tension, or, you know, those are hard to lift heavy anyways. But if you lay on your side, so almost like a side plank, but you can almost like just lay on your side completely and just raise your arm, because gravity is going to be taking over from the start of that exercise rather than the top of the exercise, you're going to start getting into that deltoid a lot, or the shoulder muscle a lot faster. Yeah. So doing it on your side, you can use, I'm telling you, like 3 to 5 pound weights and still be feeling the effect under 30 reps for sure. And you could do that out to the side. You could do that kind of out in front of you. You can even do a row from that angle. And a lot of those you're going to be doing it in a lighter load than you would in a traditional kind of setting.
And then the last exercise we had down, again, to try and hit that shoulder, especially overhead shoulder work, would be doing something like a down dog push-up, where if you're familiar with down dog in yoga, you kind of have your hips piked up in the air, your legs are straight, and you're trying to do a push-up with those arms pressing pretty much overhead. And I like this because it's going to help you kind of keep your elbows forward, where some people, when they're doing a shoulder press with the elbows out to the side, that's when they'll get pinching and shoulder pain. To make it harder, you can always elevate your feet. To make it easier, you can elevate your hands, but still trying to do that overhead pressing motion. Something that I like to do to really isolate my shoulders is just do seated shoulder press with a light weight. I always have felt pretty inherently weak in my shoulders going overhead compared to the rest of my body and other lifts. So me using 25 or 30 pound weights, which is light for me compared to other lifts, sitting on the ground, I could not get more than 15 or 20 reps of that before I hit failure.
Well, it's great because you can't compensate, right? You can't extend from your low back, which your body probably loves
my body
to do.
wants to extend from the low back, or just like kicking with my legs a little bit to compensate for the muscular strength that I actually have.
Right. So yeah, that's a really good one. And hopefully we give you an idea that you can still lift lighter load in different ways by manipulating the body in different ways, even just choosing some body weight exercises. And again, following that repetition, which is pretty easy to start to put into your mind, you know, having that lower load at under 30 reps.
That was 7-8 exercises right there that you could use to form into your first 10-week strength program.
Do that a couple times a week and you're going to start to really see those gains. But now, as physical therapists, we are not your registered dietitian, but of course, if we want to see proper hypertrophy in the muscles, we need adequate protein intake. So
And just nutrition in general.
Monitoring stress in general. Like if you want to be, hydrating, sleeping, stress, like all of this is going to play a role in effectively being able to gain muscle and lift weights adequately as well and have better muscle repair and growth. So I think really paying attention to those factors is huge.
And for people who also might be looking for a place to start, Jen has incredible strength workouts, strength programs. It's the full body, low intensity plan on Gen Health that uses probably a lot of these exercise examples that we just brought up, but also just systematically sets you up so that you have strength workouts that are easy to approach, that you can do in home with minimal weights, focusing on this high rep range and form to avoid joint pain. So we'll have that linked up down in the show notes for podcast guests. If you want to start the first month at a discount, you can use code OPTIMAL at checkout and start getting strong, start making strength training and growing that muscle mass important to you, especially late in life.
Thanks so much for joining us on another episode. I hope you learned a lot and you're taking into consideration what you could do in your life. Of course, if you have any follow-up questions, drop them in the comments below. We want to hear from you. How can we help? Are there other questions we can answer for you when it comes to this topic? And if you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell because we have so much more coming at you.